They invited my ex to my engagement party, the $50,000 wedding that almost never happened. The moment I saw her walk through the door of the upscale restaurant my parents had rented out for our engagement party, time stood still. And not in the romantic, movie-worthy way it had when James proposed 6 months earlier. No, this was the kind of time freeze that makes your stomach drop and your mouth go dry. Standing 15 feet away, wearing a red dress that screamed, "Look at me," was Vanessa, my ex of 4 years, who had spectacularly shattered my heart into a million pieces just 18 months before I met James. What the hell was she doing at my engagement party? Let me back up. I'm Sophia Chen, 29-year-old marketing director at a Fortune 500 company, engaged to James Montgomery, the kind of man I never thought existed outside of romance novels. The kind who remembers how I take my coffee, who sends flowers randomly on Tuesdays, and who proposed with my grandmother's restored vintage ring because he knew family heirlooms meant everything to me. Our wedding was set for just 3 months from now, a $50,000 extravaganza that had consumed my life, my savings, and my sanity for the past half year. The venue was booked at the prestigious Wellington estate overlooking the coastline. The custom-designed dress that made me feel like royalty had just finished its final alterations. Our honeymoon to the Maldives was fully paid for, non-refundable. Everything was perfect. Until the moment it wasn't. The party from hell. Sophia? James appeared at my side, champagne flute in hand. You look like you've seen a ghost. My mouth opened, but nothing came out. Across the room, Vanessa was now hugging my cousin Taylor, laughing as if she belonged here, as if she hadn't once called me fundamentally unlovable before walking out of our shared apartment with her suitcases and my dignity. That's, I finally managed to whisper. That's Vanessa. James stiffened beside me. He knew all about Vanessa, the woman who had convinced me to invest $15,000 in her guaranteed successful startup that had folded in 6 months. The woman who had cheated on me with her coworker. The woman who had told me with stunning cruelty that I was too boring to spend her life with. Your ex Vanessa? James confirmed, his voice tight. Who invited her? I scanned the room frantically, trying to understand what cosmic joke was being played on me. My eyes landed on my mother, who was making her way toward us with a too bright smile plastered on her face. Darling, isn't this wonderful? So many people came to celebrate you two. She air-kissed both my cheeks, the scent of her expensive perfume momentarily overwhelming me. Mom, I said through clenched teeth, why is Vanessa here? My mother's smile didn't falter, but her eyes darted nervously to the side. Oh, well, you know the Blackwells and the Chens have been friends for generations. I couldn't very well invite Margaret and Robert without including their daughter. Their daughter who broke my heart and stole my money? My voice was rising, and a few nearby guests turned to look. Sophia, my mother hissed, not here. This is your engagement party. People are watching. That was always my mother's primary concern. What would people think? Image was everything to Caroline Chen, socialite extraordinaire and perfectionist to her core. The woman who had insisted on this lavish engagement party despite James and I wanting something simpler. The woman who had invited 200 people, most of whom I barely knew. James slid his arm around my waist, a gesture that usually calmed me. Mrs. Chen, with all due respect, Vanessa's presence is completely inappropriate. She hurt Sophia deeply. That was years ago, my mother waved dismissively. People change. Vanessa is doing quite well now. She just made partner at that prestigious law firm downtown. Did you know she's dating Congressman William's son? Of course. Success and connections, the only currency my mother truly valued. I don't care if she's dating the president, I said, feeling heat rise to my face. I want her to leave. My mother's smile finally dropped. Don't be dramatic, Sophia. Creating a scene will only make things worse. Just avoid her. It's a big party. With that, she glided away to charm other guests, leaving me fuming and James looking concerned. We can leave if you want, he offered quietly. We don't have to stay. I was tempted, so tempted, to grab his hand and flee. But this party had cost my parents nearly $30,000. The gifts piling up on the designated table represented thousands more. And most importantly, running away would give Vanessa the satisfaction of knowing she still had power over me. No, I decided, squaring my shoulders. This is our engagement party. I'm not letting her ruin it. Easier said than done. The nightmare continues. For the next hour, I tried to enjoy the party and forget about Vanessa's presence. James and I made rounds, accepting congratulations and well wishes, smiling until my cheeks hurt. But my eyes kept gravitating to her like a car crash I couldn't look away from. She was networking like a pro, laughing with my father's business associates, charming my college friends. Each time I glimpsed her, my anxiety spiked. What was she saying about me? Was she mentioning our past? Was she judging the decorations, the food, my dress? Sophia, breathe, James whispered during a moment alone. Your knuckles are white. I realized I was clutching my champagne flute so hard it might shatter. I'm sorry, I just can't believe she's here, acting like she belongs. Want me to accidentally spill red wine on that dress? He offered with a mischievous smile. Despite my stress, I laughed. Tempting, but my mother would have a coronary. James's humor was one of the things that had helped me heal after Vanessa. With him, laughter came easily. Trust had been harder. Vanessa had left me with deep scars. But James had been patient, never pushing but always reassuring. There you are, a voice boomed, and I turned to see my future father-in-law approaching, red-faced from champagne and good cheer. Richard Montgomery was everything my parents weren't, loud, unpretentious, and genuinely warm. He enveloped me in a bear hug. The most beautiful bride-to-be in the country, he declared, making me blush. Dad, you're embarrassing her, James said, but he was smiling. That's my job as your father, Richard replied before lowering his voice conspiratorially. Though between us, your mother and I eloped, saved a fortune and avoided all this pomp and circumstance. The idea sounded more appealing by the minute. Don't give her ideas, Dad, James warned jokingly. We've already put down non-refundable deposits. $50,000, I sighed. I sometimes wonder if we shouldn't have just taken that money for a down payment on a house. Richard nodded thoughtfully. Not too late to change plans, you know. But it was too late. Invitations had been sent, vendors had been paid, and more importantly, disappointing my parents wasn't an option, not if I wanted to maintain any semblance of peace. Speech time. My father's voice came through the microphone at the front of the room. If everyone could gather around, we'd like to toast the happy couple. As we made our way to the front, I caught sight of Vanessa again. She was watching me with an unreadable expression, glass in hand. Our eyes met for a fleeting second before I quickly looked away, my heart racing. At the front of the room, my father began the expected speech about love and family legacy. James's parents followed with touching words about welcoming me to their family. Then it was James's turn. He took the microphone, his eyes finding mine in the crowd. I had a whole speech prepared, he began, about how lucky I am to have found Sophia. But standing here now, looking at her, words fail me. A collective awe swept through the room. What I can say is this: Sophia makes me better. She challenges me, supports me, and loves me in a way I never thought possible. When you find someone who makes you the best version of yourself, you hold on tight. Tears pricked my eyes. Despite the Vanessa situation, despite my mother's controlling nature, despite the extravagant wedding that was causing me more stress than joy, I knew with absolute certainty that James was worth it all. Then the microphone was thrust into my hands. I hadn't prepared anything, assuming I wouldn't need to speak. Panic fluttered in my chest as I looked out at the sea of expectant faces. I began awkwardly. Thank you all for coming to celebrate with us. Standard opening, safe. James is... I looked at him, and suddenly words came easier. James is the kindest person I've ever known. He taught me that love shouldn't hurt, that it should feel like coming home. From the corner of my eye, I saw Vanessa shift uncomfortably. Before James, I had forgotten what it felt like to be truly valued. I couldn't help it. My eyes drifted to Vanessa's face. To be chosen every day by someone who sees all of you, flaws and all, and loves you anyway. Vanessa's face darkened. Good. So thank you, James, for choosing me. And thank you to both our families for supporting us on this journey to our wedding day. I raised my glass. To love that lasts. To love that lasts, the crowd echoed. As applause filled the room, James pulled me close and whispered, That was perfect. I love you. For a moment, everything felt right again. Then I saw Vanessa making her way toward us. The confrontation. Congratulations, Vanessa said, appearing before us with that trademark confidence that had once made me weak in the knees. Up close, I could see tiny lines around her eyes that hadn't been there before. You make a lovely couple. Thank you, James replied coolly when I couldn't find my voice. If you'll excuse us. Actually, could I speak with Sophia alone for a moment? Vanessa asked, her tone falsely sweet. Just to catch up? Absolutely not, James said immediately. It's fine, I found myself saying, surprising us both. Just for a minute. James gave me a concerned look. Are you sure? I nodded, squeezing his hand reassuringly. I'll be right back. Reluctantly, he left us, but I noticed he didn't go far, positioning himself by the bar with a clear view of our conversation. It was one of the countless ways he showed me I was protected now. You look good, Soph, Vanessa said, using the nickname she'd always called me. It felt wrong coming from her lips now. What are you doing here, Vanessa? I asked bluntly. She took a sip of her champagne. I was invited. By my mother, who had no right. You know perfectly well you shouldn't be here. Vanessa had the audacity to look hurt. I thought maybe after all this time we could be civil. We have a lot of mutual connections. Civil? I repeated incredulously. You cheated on me, told me I was unlovable, and took $15,000 of my savings for your can't-miss business opportunity that mysteriously went bankrupt. She at least had the grace to look slightly embarrassed. Business ventures fail all the time. I lost money too. Except you didn't put in any of your own money, did you? The realization had come too late, after weeks of trying to track down where the money had gone. It was all investor funds, my funds, paying for your first-class lifestyle while you pretended to build a company. Vanessa's perfectly manicured hand tightened around her glass. That's not fair. I had a business plan. The market changed. The market didn't change. You lied, just like you lied about everything else. My voice was steady now, years of suppressed anger finding an outlet. What's your real reason for coming tonight? It certainly isn't to wish me well. Her eyes flickered over to where my mother was holding court with her friends. Your mother and my parents go way back. She specifically mentioned wanting me here, said she always thought we'd end up together. Of course she did. My mother had adored Vanessa, the polished, successful lawyer from an equally prestigious family. In her eyes, James, a talented architect from a middle-class background, had never quite measured up. Well, my mother doesn't always get what she wants, I said firmly. Neither do you. Vanessa's expression shifted, a flash of the vulnerability she rarely showed. Do you ever think about us? What might have been? No, I lied. The truth was more complicated. I had thought about it, about how her betrayal had nearly broken me, how close I'd come to accepting that kind of love as all I deserved, how James had shown me what real partnership felt like. I don't believe you, she said softly. That's not my problem, I replied. Now I'm going back to my fiancé and our guests. I think it would be best if you left. I turned to walk away, but her next words stopped me cold. He doesn't know you like I do, Sophia. Does he know about Madrid? My blood froze. Madrid had been a dark period in my life, a reckless weekend after a painful breakup before Vanessa, involving bad decisions and a brush with authorities over a misunderstanding at a club. Nothing criminal had resulted from it, but it was a mortifying story I'd shared with Vanessa in confidence during one of those vulnerable late-night conversations early in our relationship. I whirled back to face her. Are you threatening me at my own engagement party? Her smile was sweet, but her eyes were cold. Not threatening, just reminiscing. In that moment, I saw Vanessa clearly for who she truly was. Not the woman I had once loved, but someone who derived power from others' vulnerability. Someone who couldn't stand to see me happy without her. James knows everything about me, I said quietly. The good, the bad, and the ugly. That's what real love is. Complete acceptance. Something you never understood. I watched uncertainty flicker across her face. Now, I won't ask again. Please leave. For a tense moment, I thought she might refuse. Then, with a tight smile, she set down her glass. Congratulations again, Sophia. I hope he makes you happy. He does, I said simply. More than you ever tried to. As she walked away, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders, one I hadn't even realized I'd been carrying. James appeared at my side almost immediately. Everything okay? He asked, concerned. I nodded. watching Vanessa collect her purse and make excuses to my mother. It is now. The aftermath. The following day, my phone exploded with messages. Word of my confrontation with Vanessa had spread through our social circle like wildfire, despite my best efforts to be discreet. Apparently, several guests had overheard parts of our conversation, and Vanessa's abrupt departure had not gone unnoticed. My mother called 6 times before I finally answered. "Sophia Chen, what were you thinking?" she demanded without preamble. "The Blackwells are mortified that Vanessa left early. Your father and I had to make excuses for your behavior." "My behavior?" I repeated incredulously. "You invited my ex to my engagement party without telling me, and I'm the one with bad behavior?" "It was a gesture of goodwill," my mother insisted, showing there were no hard feelings. "Now everyone is talking." "Let them talk," I said, surprising myself with my boldness. "Mom, what you did was inappropriate and hurtful. You know what Vanessa did to me. That relationship was years ago. You need to move on." "I have moved on, with James. The man I'm marrying in 3 months, remember?" There was a pause. "About the wedding," my mother began carefully. "Your father and I have been thinking. The Wellington estate is lovely, but the Blackwells just renovated their country house. They've offered to host the reception there as a gift. It would save us a considerable amount." I nearly dropped the phone. "Are you serious right now? You want me to have my wedding reception at my ex's parents' house?" "It would be a wonderful gesture of reconciliation," my mother continued, as if I hadn't spoken. "And the gardens there are spectacular, much nicer than the Wellington." This was beyond believable. "Absolutely not. The wedding plans stay as they are." "Sophia, be reasonable. This wedding is costing us a fortune." "A fortune you insisted on spending," I reminded her. "James and I wanted something smaller, remember?" "Well, you can't have a small wedding with your position in the company and your father's business connections to consider. This is about more than just you and James." That was the problem. It had never been about just me and James. It had been about appearances, connections, and my mother's vision of the perfect society wedding. I took a deep breath. "Mom, I need to go. We can talk about this later." I hung up before she could argue further. James found me staring blankly at my phone when he returned from his morning run. "Let me guess. Your mother?" I nodded wearily. "She's now suggesting we have our reception at the Blackwells' country estate, as a gesture of reconciliation." He sat beside me on the couch, still slightly out of breath. "You're kidding." "I wish I were." "What do you want to do?" he asked, in that way he had, making it clear my opinion was what mattered most. I leaned against him, drawing comfort from his solid presence. "I don't know. This wedding has become something I barely recognize. $50,000 for one day, most of it to impress people I don't even care about." "We could elope," James suggested, only half joking. "My dad would approve." The idea should have been absurd, and yet, "What if we did?" I said slowly. "Not elope exactly, but change things, make the wedding about us again." James looked at me curiously. "I'm listening." "The deposits are non-refundable anyway. What if we kept the venue but scaled everything way back? Cut the guest list to just people we actually want there. No business connections, no distant relatives we haven't seen in years. No Vanessa," James added with a grin. "Definitely no Vanessa." I was warming to the idea. "And we could donate the difference in cost to that shelter you've been volunteering at." James's eyes lit up. "Sophia Chen, have I told you lately that you're brilliant?" "Not in the last 24 hours, I teased. "Well, you are." He kissed me softly. "If that's what you want to do, I'm all in." It wouldn't be easy. My mother would resist. My father would worry about offending business associates, and the logistics of scaling back 3 months before the wedding would be challenging. But for the first time since we got engaged, I felt excited rather than stressed about our wedding day. The decision. Telling my parents about our decision required courage I wasn't sure I possessed. We invited them to dinner at our apartment the following weekend, hoping a private setting would make the conversation easier. It didn't. "Absolutely not," my mother said flatly after we explained our plan. "Invitations have already gone out, people have made travel arrangements." "We're not canceling the wedding," I clarified, "just scaling it back. The people who truly care about us will understand." "And the donations to the shelter?" my father asked, speaking up for the first time. Unlike my mother, he seemed curious rather than outraged. James explained the shelter's mission, providing job training and housing assistance to homeless veterans. My father, who had served briefly in his youth, nodded thoughtfully. "That's admirable," he conceded. "But your mother has a point about the invitations." "We'll send out change of plans notices," I said, explaining that we've decided to have a more intimate ceremony but would still love their well wishes. "And what will we tell the Wilsons? And the Grants? And the Hayeses?" My mother was working herself into a state. "They'll think we've uninvited them because they're not important enough." Or, James suggested gently, "they'll understand that two people in love want to celebrate their commitment in a way that feels authentic to them," my mother scoffed. "Weddings aren't about authenticity, they're about tradition and social obligation." "Maybe yours was," I said quietly. "I want mine to be different." A tense silence fell over the dining room. Finally, my father sighed. "How much of the budget would go to this shelter?" "About 30,000, James answered. "We'd keep the venue and the basics, but simplify everything else." My mother gasped. $30,000? That's absurd! "More absurd than spending it on ice sculptures and centerpieces for people who barely know us?" I challenged. "Your guests expect a certain standard," she insisted. "Our real guests will be happy with whatever makes us happy," I countered. My father looked between us, then at James. "This shelter, it does good work?" James nodded. "The best. They've helped over 200 veterans find housing and employment in the last year alone." My father turned to my mother. "Caroline, perhaps we should consider—" "I can't believe you're taking their side," she interrupted, standing abruptly. "This is about our family's reputation, too." "No," I said firmly, also rising. "This is about James and me starting our marriage the way we want to live it, thoughtfully, with purpose, and focused on what truly matters." My mother looked at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. Disappointment? Surprise? Something else entirely? "I need some air," she said finally, grabbing her purse and heading for the door. My father gave me an apologetic look before following her. Once they were gone, I collapsed onto the couch. "That went well." James sat beside me, taking my hand. "Actually, I think it did. Your father seemed receptive." My mother didn't. "She'll come around," he said optimistically. "And if she doesn't—" I looked at him. "If she doesn't? Then we do it anyway." His voice was gentle but firm. "Sophia, this is our wedding, our life together. At some point, we have to start making decisions based on what we want, not what others expect from us." He was right, of course. The engagement party disaster with Vanessa had only highlighted how much control I'd surrendered to keep the peace. It was time to reclaim our wedding, and by extension, our future. The wedding that almost wasn't. The next 3 months were a whirlwind of revised plans, difficult conversations, and unexpected allies. My father, to my surprise, became our strongest advocate, helping to convince my mother that a scaled-back wedding could still be elegant and meaningful. "I've always taught you to be fiscally responsible," he reminded her during one particularly heated discussion. "Sophia and James are making a responsible choice." The guest list was cut from 200 to 60, just family and close friends. The 7-course dinner became a refined but simpler meal. The 12-piece orchestra was replaced with a string quartet for the ceremony, and a DJ friend of James's for the reception. Most surprisingly, when word of our donation plans spread, several of our friends, and even some of my parents' friends, made additional donations to the veterans' shelter. What had begun as our private decision became a communal effort that raised over $45,000 for the cause. My mother eventually made peace with the changes, though not without frequent sighs and comments about what could have been. The final test came 2 weeks before the wedding, when she asked if she should send a courtesy invitation to the Blackwells. "No," I said firmly. "Not after what happened at the engagement party." To my shock, she didn't argue. "I owe you an apology for that," she said instead, avoiding my eyes. "I shouldn't have invited Vanessa without discussing it with you first." It wasn't a full acknowledgement of how inappropriate her actions had been, but from my mother, it was monumental. "Thank you," I said simply. "I just want you to be happy," she continued. I I thought Vanessa was better suited to our world. But I see now how James looks at you, how you look at him. She smiled faintly. Your father used to look at me that way. It was the most vulnerable I'd ever seen my mother. He still does, I told her. When you're not looking. The day of our wedding dawned clear and perfect. The Wellington Estate gardens were in full bloom, requiring minimal additional decoration. My dress, still custom but with several $1,000s worth of unnecessary embellishments removed, felt perfect against my skin. James waited for me at the end of the aisle, looking so handsome in his tuxedo that my breath caught. As my father walked me toward him, I saw only joy and love in the faces surrounding us. No obligation, no social climbing, no hidden agendas. You look beautiful, James whispered when I reached him. So do you, I whispered back, making him smile. Our vows were simple but heartfelt. We promised to choose each other every day, to build a life of meaning together, and to always communicate honestly, lessons hard won through past relationships. At the reception, my father surprised everyone with an emotional toast. When my daughter was born, he began, his voice thick, I made a silent promise to give her everything. As she grew, I thought that meant material things, opportunities, connections. Today, I realize it means supporting her happiness, whatever form that takes. He raised his glass to James. Thank you for making my daughter happier than I've ever seen her. Later, as James and I swayed to our first dance, I spotted my parents watching us. My mother's head rested on my father's shoulder in a rare public display of affection. Behind them, a framed certificate announced the donation to the Veterans Shelter in honor of our wedding day. No regrets? James murmured against my ear. I thought about the wedding that almost was, the extravagant, impersonal spectacle designed to impress. I thought about Vanessa and the toxic relationship I'd nearly convinced myself was love. I thought about how close I'd come to letting others define my life's most important moments. Not a single one, I said, and meant it with my whole heart. The $50,000 wedding that almost never happened had transformed into something far more valuable, the perfect beginning to a life built on our terms, with the people who truly mattered, and a contribution to a cause greater than ourselves. Sometimes, the best things happen when your carefully made plans fall apart. And sometimes your ex showing up uninvited to your engagement party is the wake-up call you didn't know you needed.